Let's start with collecting the items for translation, and there are two ways for collecting the items, a manual way and a more automatic one. The manual way is quite simple. Just use the context menu in the Pimcore backend and click Request Translation. There are a couple of settings for the translation job, like the due date, like a name for the translation job, defining the source language. If the element has children, we also can include all the children, and if there are multiple levels of children, we can restrict it to the first level, so just direct children and not the whole tree. And then last but not least, we need to define the target language or target languages, click OK, and we have requested the translation. This also is possible with whole folders. There we have also now this include children activated here, and we also see an item count for all the translation items that will be created if we tick this. Same is also possible for a selection in the grid, so also there we can request a translation, and it is also possible to request translations directly from the object grid. To make this work properly, we need some configurations that need to be set up during the installation of the bundle and are described here in the documentation. And these are a couple of Symfony configurations there, like the default provider, which is a Symfony service and defines to which translation provider we want to send the translations that we are requesting in the backend. Then we can specify the notification recipients, which are recipients that get notifications with the Pimcore notification service. And then last but not least, we also can define the allowed languages, which can be a subset of all the languages available in the Pimcore system. The automatic way for collecting items for translation requires a bit more configuration, and this configuration is described here in this automatic change detection section of the documentation, because this automatic way is based on a change detection of relevant data. For setting up, we have to do two steps. The first step is to defining a so-called data changed handler. And this data changed handler is responsible for checking if relevant data has checked. And it's basically a service that needs to implement this data changed handler interface. And the framework already ships with a default implementation, but you also can use your own custom implementation if you need some special functionality there. If you use the default implementation, then this default implementation can be configured with a certain set of attributes. First of all, we can define the source language, we can define the target languages, we can define the translation provider where we want to send the translation to, and last but not least, we also can define the allowed classes the change handler should listen for. It is also possible to configure multiple data changed handler. So for example, different data changed handler for different object classes that need to be translated in different target languages, or where we want to send the translations to different translations provider. Once we have set up the data changed handlers, then we also need to configure that these data changed handler are triggered automatically every time, for example, a data object is saved. And for that, we need to set up event listeners that listen for these update events and trigger the data changed handlers. And for that, there is also already a default implementation available from the framework. And what we need to do is just configure this as a service and register it as an event listener. And as soon as this is set up, then we just need to open up data objects that are listened for example, here this news object, and let's just add here some text, save this, and now in the background the data changed handler is activated and will listen for data changes. To pack all these items that we required for translation to a translation job, doesn't matter if we did this manually or with the automatic change detection, there needs to be a command executed that normally runs in the background, and this is this translations provider interface bundle jobs command. and there are a couple of options we have available here, and the relevant option for this step right now for creating the actual translation jobs is this create job from changed items. So this one needs to be executed, and then all the items that we requested for translations are really packed into translation jobs. And as soon as this is done, we have this translation jobs available also in our translation jobs queue, where we see now our two jobs we have created. The first one based on this manual data object we have changed. We have this event here. And then the second job is based on this automatic change detection, where we have this news object in our translation job. Of course, one translation job also can have multiple items included. It depends, of course, on how many we requested and how many changes were made.